Hi, I'm Dr. Anna Baranowsky, and I am here again today with Avi Craimer, and he is a meditation and spiritual teacher. And this is actually the second conversation that we're having. But today we're going to talk about a really important topic called self-compassion. Well, compassion in general, and just how important that is in terms of what happens to people when they allow themselves to offer kindness to themselves and even kindness to the wider world around them and really embed that skill. I cannot tell you how many people that I've talked to about self-compassion and how many people, given my background working with trauma survivors, tell me they have no idea to be compassionate, how to be compassionate with themselves. Like, they've got an idea of compassion, and when I ask them, what does it mean when you think about somebody you feel a lot of easy compassion towards, or kindness towards, or generosity towards, or forgiveness towards, that is super easy. But when it comes to them thinking about, well, how to be compassionate with themselves, there seems to be this like disconnect.
Yeah.
And this real struggle. And I find that when trauma is part of the story, or when there's been childhood emotional neglect particularly, which I consider a trauma, self-compassion is something that becomes a really important issue to contend with. And we also know that with the new research on self-compassion, really guided a lot by Dr. Kristen Neff, who's a psychologist and really started to open up the field of self-compassion a number of years ago. There's more and more research, and it seems to pretty consistently show that anxiety and depression reduces as people learn self-compassion skills. So here's Avi to tell us a little bit about self-compassion and the very ancient Pali term, which is Theravada Buddhist.
Yep.
Karuna.
Can
you just help us to understand what that means and what self-compassion means?
Sure.
And very fortunate that Avi has agreed to do a 5-minute meditation with us at the end, so wait for that.
Thanks, Anna. So, so the Pali word karuna means compassion, and specifically what it means is the sort of the wish for oneself and others to suffer less.
Oh,
right?
Nice.
So it's a very specific meaning, actually. I mean, it kind of relates to the way we confront suffering in our lives. So suffering is kind of all around us. It's a part of human existence, and we can choose actually what attitude we take towards suffering. And if we choose that attitude of sort of intending for the relief of suffering or the release of suffering, which might seem kind of obvious, and in some ways it is very natural, right? If, like you were saying, if you see, a child who's crying, right, you have a natural reaction of, they're there, you want to do something about it. But we can't always fix suffering in the sense that we can't always do something to make the cause of suffering go away in the outside world. So when we do a meditative practice of karuna, we're actually practicing just kind of that inner shift. So it's not about necessarily fixing or helping, although it can lead to that in terms of our actions. But in terms of the practice of meditation, it's really not about the fixing or helping kind of part of it. It's really this kind of intention. I like to think of it as kind of you're putting a message in a bottle and throwing it into the ocean. Right? So you're not saying, you don't have to know how to fix it. If you have a trauma, you don't have to know how you're going to heal from that trauma, or how you're going to, or if there's some problem, in your life or in another person's life that you don't know how to fix, you can still do compassion, right? When you say, in the practice of compassion, we say a phrase, and it's usually a phrase like, may my suffering be relieved, or may this suffering come to an end, or may your suffering be relieved if you're practicing it towards another person. And that phrase is really just there to remind us of this basic attitude, right? So it kind of recenters us on this attitude of compassion. And it's really important that when we say that phrase, we do it with equanimity, meaning we do it with acceptance, that we can't necessarily change or fix what's going on. But what we can do is sort of cultivate this attitude of wishing for the best, of wishing for a better reality, even if we don't know how to necessarily get there.
I love that you use this phrase around suffering. May your suffering be less, or be lessened, or may my suffering be less, or be lessened. And again, with my work, very specifically with trauma survivors, I think there is a real struggle in our culture because sadness and suffering is not very well accepted. So people can easily come to the conclusion that they're doing something bad or wrong by suffering, and that actually adds to the suffering.
Yeah.
Or that they should somehow be happy. And there's this crazy obsession, I think, in our culture with happiness. When we have a full range of emotion, that means we have a full range of emotion. And, sadness and suffering are actually part of that full range of emotion, and that's a normal, natural response to something very deeply sad or wounding in life. And that I love this idea that this languaging seems to create a soft landing spot for suffering, for sadness, for pain, for sorrow, and for what can be in life truly difficult things that we encounter, and that it's very important to leave space for that and have a great maturity around how we encounter it. So you are going to walk us through I believe a 5-minute exercise on Karuna or self-compassion.
Yes.
So whenever you're ready, or if you need to say anything more.
Oh, no, that's, I think we've covered the basics, so you could always say more. But so for the meditation, if you're watching this video at home, hopefully for this part of it, you could sort of try to be in a relatively quiet space. And you can just, if you're sitting in a chair, you can just sort of try to sit with a bit of an upright posture. And I'm going to just start a timer here. And then, so you can, if it feels comfortable to you, you can close your eyes. And if not, you can just kind of leave your eyes opening, but look down at the floor or somewhere else that's not going to be too distracting. And then just to start, you can take a couple of deep breaths. And on the exhale of those breaths, just sort of release any excess tension you might be carrying. Start to kind of feel yourself sinking into the chair a little bit. At the same time, if you notice that you're starting to get sleepy, or that your posture is drooping a little bit, you can try to move it and be a little bit more upright. Don't have to strain into a rigid position, but by keeping your spine upright, it helps you to stay awake and alert. So just take a few more deep breaths and let them go. So now I just want you to notice this person who is sitting with you, which is you, yourself, and try to think of yourself not as me or I, but as just another person. So sometimes we get caught up in thinking it's hard to give compassion to ourselves, but we're able to give it to others. And a great way around this is just to think of yourself as any other person, as deserving as compassion as any other person, not making a special exception of yourself. So if you can, just say, hey, here I am. You can say your name if you want. And, I suffer, and it's okay that I suffer. But I also need compassion. I need this attitude that holds that suffering, kind of cushions it or envelops it. And that compassion won't necessarily make the suffering go away. It's really important to know that. So see if you can feel into that. Feel into ways in which you might have suffered in the past or be suffering right now. And kind of envelop it with this attitude of compassion, this wishing for the suffering to be eased. Not expecting it to change, but just kind of dropping that message into the vast ocean. You can say those words of the phrase if that helps you to stay centered. may my suffering be eased. May this suffering be relieved. And keep repeating those words slowly. There's no rush, there's no hurry to get through them. Just staying with yourself and any suffering you might be experiencing or might have experienced in the past. Holding yourself gently and tenderly with that attitude of compassion. One last time. Start to come out of the meditation. There's no need to rush. Whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Exiting the meditation, you might want to stretch a bit or move your body just to kind of come fully back into the room.
Wow, doing that exercise, you really get in touch with the tenderness that lives inside. It's a beautiful, beautiful practice. So, because it's going to the YouTube channel, it means that people can go through the exercise more than once, and I think probably there are a lot of different layers that you can get access to with such a tender meditation. It was only 5 minutes, but it was very, very lovely. So thank you so much, Avi. Is there anything else that you want to share about self-compassion or Karuna or generally the work that you do?
Well, Karuna is one type of meditation that's part of a family of meditations. It also includes metta and mudita. Metta is loving kindness, which is a more kind of positive, is more oriented towards wishing for the good, not only oriented towards suffering. And then mudita is kind of like gratitude, similar to gratitude. It's this idea of appreciating what is good in life and kind of taking joy in that, not only for your own life, but also in other people's lives. So they're all great practices, and you can learn more about them if you just Google those words, or I also do work. I'm a meditation teacher, and I work with people one-on-one. So you can also be in touch with me if you want to learn more about those practices or any other meditation practices that I teach. And but yeah, if you already have a mindfulness practice, it can be really great to try to incorporate at least a bit of Karuna, metta, right at the end of your sit. So if you have a 20-minute sit, you might take the last 5 minutes to just do the metta or Karuna. It's a great way to end your meditation practice.
Well, thank you so very much for sharing that with me and with our viewers. And again, Avi Craimer, and this is Dr. Anna Baranowsky wishing you a gentle day.